If you're in midlife and feeling stuck, burnt out, or unsure of what your next step should be, you're in the right place. Here, we focus on clarity first so that you can move forward with confidence on your own terms. I'm Denny Medeiros, and I'm committed to helping midlife professionals find clarity, confidence, and new income paths on their own terms. If the year feels heavier more than it does hopeful for you, I want you to know that you're not alone and you're not doing January wrong. For many midlife professionals, January doesn't feel like a fresh start. It feels like pressure, pressure to have answers, pressure to feel motivated, pressure to make decisions about work, income, when you're already tired. And if your health and energy or life circumstances have changed, or if you've experienced recent job loss or instability, that pressure can feel overwhelming. This video is about why January often feels so heavy in midlife and how to approach the beginning of the year in a way that actually supports clarity instead of bringing on self-judgment. January comes with expectations. Even if no one says them out loud, we're expected to feel renewed, focused, and ready to move forward. But expectations don't always match reality. January assumes that energy has reset just because the calendar changed. But for many midlife professionals, the end of one year flows directly into the beginning of the next with no real pause, recovery, or reset in between. If you ended last year depleted, January often magnifies that depletion instead of erasing it. January naturally invites reflection, and reflection on its own can be useful. It helps you notice patterns, understand what worked, and see what didn't. The problem is that reflection rarely happens in isolation. It usually comes paired with comparison. Comparing yourself to who you used to be, to where you thought you'd be by now, or to what you see other people doing. And when reflection turns into comparison, pressure often follows. Pressure to catch up, pressure to fix things quickly, pressure to make decisions before you feel ready. That pressure is exhausting, especially in midlife, when your energy may already be stretched, depleted by health concerns, caregiving, or ongoing uncertainty at work. So instead of January feeling like a clean slate, it can feel like a weight. And when that weight creates fatigue, not just physical fatigue, but mental and emotional fatigue, you're not just tired from what you're doing right now. You're tired from carrying unresolved questions, unmade decisions, expectations that no longer fit your life. When reflection, comparison, pressure, and fatigue stack on top of each other, think about that, stack on top of each other, it's no wonder January can feel so heavy. And understanding this is so important because it reminds you that what you're feeling is a response to pressure, not a lack of capability. Midlife feels different because the context around work and the context around life changes, even if your skills and expertise haven't, or experience. Earlier in our careers, we often had more flexibility to push, quicker recovery time, and then try again. Energy was easier to borrow from the future. In midlife, that margin shrinks considerably. Health needs may require more attention. Energy isn't as easily replenished. Personal responsibilities like caregiving, family, financial pressure become more real and less optional. At the same time, expectations at work often remain the same, or they even increase. Think about that. So you're navigating more complexity with fewer reserves. That's not weakness, that's reality. When your internal capacity changes, but your external demands don't, it creates tension. That tension shows up as fatigue, uncertainty, hesitation, not because you can't handle things, but because you're being asked to operate under conditions that no longer fit. Understanding this matters because it shifts the question from what's wrong with me to what has changed and what needs to change with it. And that shift is where clarity begins. This is one of the most important messages. I want to slow down and emphasize this. When January feels heavy, when motivation is low, or when clarity feels out of reach, it's very easy to assume something is wrong with you. We feel that often at different times in our lives in different areas. Could be that you've lost your edge, that you're falling behind, that you should be handling things better than you are currently compared to how you used to. But what your experience, it makes sense in context. Nothing is wrong with you. Your life has just changed. Your capacity may be different. Your priorities may have shifted. Your tolerance for stress may be lower. Not because you're weaker, but because you're wiser about what things actually cost. Confusion, hesitation, fatigue are often signs of self-preservation, not failure. They're signals that that something about the way work has been structured no longer fits your reality, the reality of your current life. And when you stop interpreting those signals as personal flaws, you can start responding to them with clarity instead of criticism. This is where forward movement actually begins. Not from fixing yourself, but from listening to what your experience is telling you. Now, January is often treated as a month for commitment. Commit to a plan, commit to a goal, commit to a direction. But commitment without clarity creates pressure, not progress. I'll say that again. Commitment without clarity creates pressure, not progress, especially in midlife. When the cost of the wrong commitment is higher and recovery from misalignment takes longer. Clarity is about understanding, not deciding. It's about noticing what feels heavy, what feels unsustainable, what no longer fits the reality of our lives. When you use January for clarity, you give yourself space to observe without forcing incomes, rather than just jumping into goals and decisions without having reflected and really got the clarity you need. You're not avoiding decisions, you're gathering information. You're building a foundation. And that information is what allows you to make commitments later that actually stick instead of the ones you feel obligated to maintain. January doesn't need to be loud or decisive. It can be quiet, honest, and intentional. And that kind of January often leads to a much steadier year. Definitely leads to actually making goals based on clarity that are more achievable and fit your lifestyle. So this question isn't about dragging the past forward. What am I still carrying from last year? It's not about dragging the past forward. It's not about reopening old problems. It's really about awareness. When a year ends, not everything resolves neatly. I don't know about you, but in my life, not everything resolves neatly. Some things come, some things follow us, some things come with us. They're attached to us. Unfinished decisions, lingering exhaustion, unresolved emotions, or ongoing circumstances. Things we didn't choose. And when those things go unacknowledged, they don't disappear. They quietly influence how heavy January feels. It's like we're dragging that in with us. We drag that into January. It influences how January feels. It influences how much energy you have, how clearly you can think about what's next. So when you ask yourself what you're still carrying, you're not judging it. You're simply noticing it. You might be carrying fatigue from pushing too hard, um, carrying uncertainty after a job loss and instability. We've all experienced job loss at some point. You might be carrying disappointment that things didn't turn out the way you had hoped for them to turn out in the last year. Naming what you're carrying doesn't mean you have to fix it right now. You're identifying it. It just means you're no longer pretending it isn't there, right? And that honestly is often the first step toward real clarity. It is. Before change comes, clarity. Before decisions comes clarity. Before commitments come clarity. Clarity isn't about having the answers. It's about understanding enough to stop guessing. Did you hear that? Clarity is not about having all the answers. It's about understanding enough to stop guessing. It's the moment when the noise settles and you can tell the difference between pressure and preference, between what you should do and what actually fits. In midlife, clarity matters more than speed. That's how I find it. There was a day where things, it mattered to be quicker, but at middle age, clarity matters more than speed. The reason is because moving quickly in the wrong direction costs time, it costs energy, it costs confidence. And those are resources that you're no longer willing to waste. I'm not. The older I get, the less willing I am to waste time, energy, and confidence. When you lead with clarity, you make fewer decisions out of fear, out of urgency, out of comparison. You start choosing based on alignment instead of obligation. That's why clarity always comes first. It doesn't rush you forward, it steadies you. If this gave you a bit more clarity, even the slightest bit more clarity, take a moment to pause with what you've learned, what I've shared. You don't need to decide anything today. There's no rush. Clarity comes first. And if you'd like more structured support, I have resources that are listed in my YouTube description and that I'll list below this video that can help you explore what fits your own terms, help you start gaining that clarity and turn January around from heaviness to start building some momentum. Again, I'm Denny Medeiros, and it was a pleasure to share with you today.